Welcome back to the Bigger Than Birth podcast, where we're celebrating bigger bodies and beautiful births. I'm your host, Victoria Gaba, and each week we will be bringing you the real stories of plus-size moms as they share their journey through fertility, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. These stories highlight what it's like to navigate through this experience as a woman in a bigger body in hopes of creating representation for plus-size moms, both present and future. Thank you for being part of this community as we share these stories that are so much bigger than birth. Welcome to today's show. In this episode, we sit down with Cera as she busts the myth that plus-size women can't be fertile. After over a decade on birth control, Cera was able to conceive naturally and quickly, proving that our bodies are way more capable than some statistics suggest. She takes us through her journey of finding a dream midwife who truly understood her needs, navigating a high-risk label with a sense of positivity, and her successful 37-week induction. Cera shares her positive vaginal delivery story and welcoming a beautiful, healthy baby girl. We discuss Cera's very vulnerable postpartum experience and the struggles she had with breastfeeding, ultimately leading to triple feeding. She shares the impact that this had on her mental health and the decision to switch to formula, which ultimately allowed her to reclaim her postpartum experience and gave her some autonomy. Let's dive into Cera's story. Hi, Cera. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks, Victoria. Thanks for having me.
We're super excited to hear your story, but before we jump in, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your family, and where y'all are living?
Okay, so me and my husband, we've been married since the end of 2024. We've been together several years. We were living in California. And then 6 or 7 weeks after our little one was born, we actually moved back with family to Minnesota. So we moved cross country recently with a newborn, but she was born in California and now back with family in Minnesota.
Very cool. And you said she's about 3 months, and anyone that's watching on YouTube can see we have a little visitor in the shot too. She's such a cutie.
She is snoozing, kind of.
So I guess we will jump into the story then. So were y'all trying to conceive when you did with her?
So we were not trying, I guess, let me say. I had actually been on some form of birth control for about 12 or 13 years nonstop. So as soon as we got married, I stopped the birth control and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. Because I've always heard stories about, fertility with being overweight. I hate the obese word. Like there's so much eugenics behind it. I can't stand it. But I knew that if we were going to try, we just needed to go ahead and start things. Like if it happened fast, great. If it happened slow, fine. Like we needed to get on the ball. And, I wasn't clocking my fertility or anything. Like I wasn't calculating when I was ovulating. I was just kind of going with the flow. And actually, I stopped my birth control in December 2024. And we found out that I was pregnant at the end of April 2025.
Oh,
So
wow.
it is quite possible, like to just literally your body will just regulate. And here we are. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
When you came off of the birth control, did it take a couple months for your cycles to regulate, or did they stay pretty regular until you found out?
they stayed pretty regular. I've always questioned if I've had like thyroid problems or PCOS, but honestly, like, y- you know, it is what it is. Like doctors sometimes will look at it and sometimes won't, that's a whole other topic itself. But yeah, I was pretty regular. I think that I only had like 3 or 4 periods anyways before I found out I was pregnant. So yeah, I mean, yeah. It was one weekend. I remember at the end of April, I was a couple of days late and I was thinking, oh, okay, it's either not regular anymore, like it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, or there is a very high chance that we have created a baby. I mean, sometimes it can happen really fast.
So take us through, like, you were having those thoughts of it could be either an irregular period or we're pregnant. So did you go out and buy a test straight away?
I did, and my husband helped me. He was so excited. Ladies, if your husband will not hold a cup while you pee in it because it's just tricky, especially being plus size, like to get sometimes down there. If you can't pee on a stick for 20 seconds, get your husband to hold a cup for you and he will do that because he loves you. And so we did the actual like dipping the stick in the plastic cup. And yeah, it was positive, and so I was like, "There's no way, we have to take another one," and lo and behold, and we did it. I think it was like a few hours later because we wanted it to like settle in at first and see like, okay, if we are, this is it. So, and a few hours later, lo and behold, it was positive again. And I never know with those things. Like, so I was like, okay, like I'm gonna give it a week. I called only my mom and I told her. And then actually the following weekend, we went to like our town's local urgent care because they called and said, oh, yeah, you can confirm like whether or not you're pregnant through a test there. Went in the first weekend of May and they were like, yeah, you're 5 weeks. And I was like, great. So it was nerve wracking because I think while I knew I wanted to have children, I just wasn't expecting it to happen so fast because you always hear stories about people saying, oh, well, it's harder to conceive like when you're a plus size person or blah, 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 like whatever people will say. But everybody is different. And just because I'm fat does not mean I'm not fertile, which apparently I am. So
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's a misconception that being overweight or having PCOS can impact fertility. And sure, it can sometimes, but also you can get pregnant just as easily sometimes. So don't let that be a, a foregone conclusion. Like, be careful out there.
it's true. My mom always told me, and that's why actually she like got me birth control when I went to college. According to her, she was known in the family as fertile myrtle. So she's like, you know what? You need to start this until you're ready. You need you need to be on birth control, which, to each their own. Like I wish that I didn't have to take birth control, like because that already can, affect your body as is. But I just wasn't ready to have a child until recently.
For sure. So early on at that urgent care appointment, did they confirm with a blood test or how did they confirm that for you?
They confirmed with a urine test.
Okay.
So we did blood work. I think it was like a couple of weeks later, just because I don't think that they were going to do any blood work until like they had a positive urine sample. But then I made a doctor's appointment for a couple weeks later to like start care, like primary care for my pregnancy, OB care. So yeah.
Gotcha. Did you have a specific OBGYN that you had been going to, or did you research which doctor you wanted to use?
The only research that I did was actually by clinic, and then I had my choices because of the insurance that I was on. I actually found a midwife in our local system that had great reviews from clients. She came highly recommended, like from the people in the clinic that I talked to. She was fantastic. She didn't stay with me. Actually, she retired 5 or 6 months into my pregnancy, but she was amazing to start with and like just, oh my God, the best that I could have asked for. So
You
like
were like, can
answered
you just hold out retirement a little bit longer?
I seriously, I wish she could have because like for her, I feel like I would have loved to deliver my baby for her. I did deliver for another midwife and she was fantastic too. So like it was fine either way. But no, like I think that when I saw like her on the website and saw that like she's open to everybody, you know, you can always get a vibe as a fat person knowing whether or not you think, hmm, are you going to judge me or not as a doctor? You get that initial feeling, and it's not always true, but I feel like fat people in general have a much better phobia radar
Yep.
as to doctors and what they think. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And to be able to pick up that vibe and it be a positive one, that's always a nice start to things.
Yes, to not be disappointed and know like, "Oh, well, this is just you're just like everybody else, you're just gonna judge me." No, it did not happen, so thank you, and out there, wherever you are now. So,
Enjoying your retirement out there.
yes, you help a girl so much because especially as a first-time mom, like, you never know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You never know. So, yeah, she put my mind to ease a lot, but
And
yes.
so when you were deciding on care, did you have an idea before that you kind of wanted to go the midwifery model of care? Or did you just say you found her through the clinic?
I did not know. I I'm gonna be honest, I did not know that midwives actually had to have any kind of certification. I think like I was not very knowledgeable on anything outside of an OB, an OBGYN, and what they did. Like I had no idea the difference between a midwife and a doula before. And then when she said, "Oh, we have this midwife," I was like, "Oh, okay." So I actually had to go look up what a midwife was and what they did. And essentially, I mean, it's just one step down from an OB, if that helps anybody. So they have all of the, qualifications that an OB does. It's just without the doctor title. So, to people out there, if you find a midwife and you're feeling wary, check them out. Don't like cross them out just because they're a midwife. Don't cross an OB out just because they're an OB. Both of them can provide a lot of benefits. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah.
like you said, they're both very experienced in the birth space. Sometimes they just lean a little bit differently on the like medicalized part of it, is what I find.
Yes, exactly. So, and I actually like that with a midwife, you're more likely to get a woman. In the OB space, a lot of times it's you're risking it being a man. And for me personally, I did not want a man delivering my baby. I'm sure that there are plenty OBs out there who are men who are great at what they do. I just feel more comfortable with a woman. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like for me, it would have been perfect if it were a fat woman. But like just being a woman, you know what you're working with. It's just it's like a black person having a black doctor. They're going to listen to you more. They're going to hear you more. They're going to be more compassionate with care. So yes,
Yeah, just understanding that shared experience. Absolutely.
exactly, exactly.
So, with that early on stage of pregnancy, were you having any symptoms?
I had morning sickness, threw up every morning from week 6 to week 14. Funny enough, when we found out I was pregnant, we're the couple who goes to Costco for our dates, and that saved me through pregnancy, I'll tell you what. We went a few days after in May when I found out through the doctor, through the urine test that I was pregnant. I was like, I'm going to go buy a bunch of good food. We bought so many things. And by week 6, I could not even open the fridge door. I couldn't eat anything. I was throwing up every morning. Smells were awful. Ugh, and you just lose all energy. It's just you're moaning and crying in bed. You don't want to get up. Nothing sounds good to eat. Everything sounds good to eat. So I joke that for the first trimester, she is literally made of Taco Bell. That's what I could survive on.
I feel like that's a very common experience, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. Taco Bell, thank you. They really should take advantage of, pregnant people and all of the food that why can Taco Bell stay down, but nothing else can? So I
Yep.
don't get
They need
it.
to have a complete pregnancy marketing line with Taco
There
Bell.
we go. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely. So, with the morning sickness, did you just kind of grit and bear it, or did they give you any medication for it?
They gave me Zofran. I took it once in a while when it was really bad, but I was like, "You know what? I think I'm okay." When I actually started, and Anne said this, she said, "Just go outside." My midwife, sorry, when I refer to her. Anne henceforth is my midwife. When Anne said, go outside, get some fresh air, you don't even have to like do anything, just sit in the fresh air. When I started doing that, that was fantastic. Opening my windows, sitting out on the patio, whatever someone can do to get that breeze in. And I will say, like, we lived in Ventura County in California, so it was like beautiful, like 70 degrees always. Unlike here where the snow just melted in Minnesota, get some fresh air if you can. That will literally save your life. And I feel like I had to take the medication a lot less, and it just there's something about it. If you are super sensitive to smells too, have your husband do the grocery shopping for you as well. Going into the grocery store was absolutely awful. I sat in the car half the time because I'd walk by that meat section and I wanted to gag. It was terrible. And you know what? At the end of the day, I would tell somebody, like, I feel like I'm giving advice to whatever mom or future mom listens to this. Just eat what you can. You know, if it is Taco Bell or McDonald's or whatever it is, eat and feed your baby at that point. That baby is taking the nutrients that it needs. You will be fine. Like, it's fine. If you survive off of chicken nuggets, you survive. And that's what matters the most.
Yep,
Like,
especially in those early days, I feel like there's a lot of guilt around being on a specific diet or eating specifically super healthy foods. But early on, like you said, there's sometimes you can only stomach certain things. So it's okay. Obviously, try to get balance where you can, but it's going to be okay.
exactly. Exactly. Get your fiber in where you can. That was the biggest thing for us, is like, if I can just get some fiber in my stomach so that when I get sick, it's not as terrible. And you have, the second and third trimester to eat a balanced diet. If you need junk for that first part to get your baby going, that's totally fine.
So, as you continued through pregnancy, once the morning sickness kind of subsided, how did the rest of second and third trimester go?
So, of course, because of my size, I was considered a high risk pregnancy, which, ladies, don't necessarily think that's always a bad thing, because you will actually get more ultrasounds than the average person. Fun fact, my brother and my sister in law were exactly 4 weeks ahead of us for their first baby. So literally they are cousins born like 6 days apart. I will tell you that. So both of our first babies, we were in this together. She is a straight size woman, I will say. So my sister-in-law only got 3 ultrasounds her entire pregnancy. I got, I think, 7 or 8. And while it's annoying that you are considered high risk, seeing your baby that more often and not having to like fork out money for a private ultrasound was fantastic. I loved looking forward to my next ultrasound appointment. They said, see you in 4 weeks. I said, absolutely, you will. So it is so worth it to have those extra ultrasounds. While, yes, they put that stupid note in our charts, it's it's the best seeing your baby on ultrasound. So
Yeah,
yes.
there's a positive side to that as well, for sure. Were you going to a maternal fetal medicine specialist for those appointments, or was it just with your OB or midwife?
Yes, I was actually going to a, what do they call that? A perinatologist, and she was fantastic. She was an OB, but she was not at the hospital. She was just doing a lot of ultrasounds at her own kind of private clinic. They would refer me out. It was questionable at first, because I thought at the first meet she was a little judgy, but we got along. So it's always interesting going in for an ultrasound and people saying, okay, now lift up your belly so we can see things. And I'm like, okay. They really wanted to do transvaginal. And I was like, if we can get belly, then let's try. So we got belly most of the time. We just have to work around, and there's nothing wrong with pulling up your apron belly to get a good view of your baby. She was really like, after the first couple, I think she realized that, you know, I wasn't just going to do what she thought was maybe like, if she wanted to do transvaginal, I was like, please just try. let's try transabdominal, please. She's like, are you okay holding up your stomach the whole time? I was like, absolutely. Like, she realized that I was ready to do what I needed to do to see the baby. So she was like, okay, we'll work together. So, yeah.
That's great. And I know, even like you said, if it's a rocky start, being able to advocate for yourself, if you would be
Yes.
comfortable one way versus another, then I think that's so important.
That's what it is. It's advocating for yourself and realizing, like, how can I do this? So, yes, it definitely it takes courage, and it just can feel like you're stepping off the side of a cliff, but there's a floor there,
Yep.
and you
Yeah.
will
And I
get what you
think
need if you advocate.
absolutely. And I think some women are more self conscious if they do have an apron belly or being able to hold that up, they get embarrassed. But honestly, your body is creating a life. And so you deserve also to be comfortable. Now, I get if there's certain angles or stuff that they may not be able to get that they need to, you can have a discussion with your doctor about that. But if it's just a normal, you can absolutely ask for things and work together with your doctor.
You absolutely can. And, there were times like where we couldn't get certain measurements. So I would have to wait on those for the next week, but we could always get them. And a lot of times it was just her positioning. She was a very squirmy baby and she wanted to be a certain way where we could only see her back. I was like, okay. So, it wasn't me. It was also my placenta. I had an anterior placenta. It was also my baby who was just, her positioning and how she was comfortable. That's what we had to work with. So, and what you said, like your body is creating a life. I have always kind of been self-conscious about my stomach. There was something in pregnancy to where that went away. And it was like, you know what? I am literally making a new human being. I'm not going to criticize you right now. Like, you are doing what every other body can do, like what every other person with a uterus can do.
It's like a time where our bodies have been scrutinized to some extent our whole life, or at least for me, it was my whole life. And this is the
Yes.
first time where it's like, it's encouraged to get bigger. It's encouraged to like have a larger stomach with the baby that you're creating. So yeah, it's a special
Exactly.
time. So with the midwife, as they got further in pregnancy, did she have like a specific recommendation or even mention of like, we only want you to gain a certain amount of weight, or was that never brought up?
She did bring that up. She said what the standard is like only gaining, I think it was between like 11 to 17 pounds. But I will say that she was like, you know what? As long as you're healthy at this point, if you gain more, it's fine. Like she was very nice about that. But she did say, this is what standards want you to do. And actually, I only ended up gaining like 15 or 16 pounds in total. And that was pretty much shedded off the first 2 weeks. Like half of it was just her and my placenta and the liquid. But no, and here's the thing is that I, I probably could have eaten more balanced, but I had such big cravings, especially sweet cravings that and also it's just like your body literally naturally gains weight during pregnancy because it is preparing for a baby. So yeah, you're going to pack on a few more pounds like in your boobs and in your hips and it's fine. Like it's totally fine. Like it's what your body is supposed to do.
For sure. So I know you mentioned you had an anterior placenta. With that, were you able to feel baby kick, or how were her movements throughout the pregnancy?
Yes, I could actually start to feel her probably around like 22 or 23 weeks. It was little flutters. It was probably, they always say for first time moms that you don't feel the kicks as fast as, or as like soon as you would if you've already had a baby. I remember feeling the first ones of like early 20s in the weeks. But by the time she was 28, 29 weeks, she was kicking every night. Like I could feel her. As soon as I laid down to get comfortable, she started rolling and rocking. So you can definitely feel them, and you can also see them even with a belly. You can see movement. My husband used to love to stare at my stomach when we were laying down. Although she would start kicking, I'd say, "Look over here," and then she'd stop. So
Yep. I feel like that is the universal experience. Like they hear us be like, look, they're like frozen.
no, thank you.
They're like, no audience, please.
No, people are watching now? Absolutely not.
That's so funny. So, as you got to the end of pregnancy, did you end up going into labor spontaneously or how did that go?
So I was diagnosed with gestational hypertension. Couple of things with that. I've never had hypertension issues in my life, and I knew it was likely because there's a huge genetic factor in it. And everyone who's had a baby in my family has had gestational hypertension. So my mom was actually both on bed rest for me and my brother because of that. And she was a very small woman when she had us. She was maybe like 120, 130 pounds when she got pregnant with us. So I knew that was coming. And because of that, I decided to do induction. I could have done induction later on. They were thinking like 39 weeks. I decided to go in at 37.5 just because 39 weeks would have been Christmas. So I'm trying, we want our babies to come out healthy and big enough and like have their lungs ready to go. But also I don't want my child to have to share a birthday with Jesus. So, poor kid. I already have a December birthday and I'm like, okay, whatever we can do to get you born as soon as possible, just because, I feel like I would have rejected the induction had it not been around Christmas. I would have loved to have a spontaneous birth, but it didn't happen. And I would love to share my induction story later on down the road. It's not as bad as it always seems.
So, with the hypertension, did that start a little bit earlier on, or when did they start noticing that?
Yeah, so my blood pressure started to show on the higher end, usually around like 140 over 90 is what they were finding. They didn't put me on medication right away. Something that they decided to do was just to have me monitor it at home. They actually asked do you want to start medication for this? I said, let me see how it goes. I monitored for a couple weeks. I found that things were not going down. So I was put on a very, very low dose of blood pressure medication. And with that and my aspirin, every pregnant woman should start aspirin. It helps reduce preeclampsia so much. With that, I never had any problems. It was a very low dose. It managed my blood pressure really well. It started to go up a little bit towards the end, like 35, 36 weeks. They upped my dose, but it was still considered fairly low. And I was great the whole time.
With a higher blood pressure, did they ever bring up the signs or what to look for in case it did turn into preeclampsia?
Yes, they were super careful with that. I feel like I got really lucky when it comes to a doctor who doesn't just ignore symptoms. Make sure that if you are predisposed to have hypertension, look for those vision changes, look for those headaches, look for that swelling. It's just, especially early on, like in the early 20 weeks, like, you're going to get the swelling at 35, 36 weeks, even like early 30 weeks. Like your feet are going to be swollen at the end of the day. Gosh, I don't miss that. But no, it just keep an eye on things. And I'm telling all my friends who are now pregnant, if something happens and you feel like your symptoms are scary, go to labor and delivery. Just go. They cannot deny you. They have to check you out. They will take care of you. They will do a workup. And it doesn't matter how many times you have to go. That is you. That is your baby. You take care of yourself and you take care of your baby.
Yeah, it better be safe than sorry. I would rather overreact every time than to gaslight myself into not going and then it be something wrong.
Absolutely. I actually woke up the morning of my birthday and I did not feel baby kicking at the normal time that she usually did. I got so scared. I made my husband run me to labor and delivery at like 6 a.m. and they did a workup. They found her and we did the non-stress test. She was totally good. She just apparently was very sleepy that day. She's giving mama a break on her birthday. But ma'am, please show yourself.
Can you please keep kicking me? That would be my
Yes.
birthday present.
Today out of all days, I need you to just tell me you're there.
So, with the induction, I know you said you went in at 37 ish weeks. So, how did that process begin for you?
So I went in at 37.5. I actually decided we decided with my care team to go in at 10 p.m. because usually when you're starting, especially from a cold induction, like close to cervix, everything, it's going to take a while. So I got to the hospital with all my things around 9:45 Wednesday night. And we started the process around 11:30. It took 12 hours of, oh God, I can't remember what the medicine is, but the stuff that they put up in your cervix to essentially soften it.
Was it the Cervidil?
Cervidil, thank you. Yes. We did 12 hours of that. It softened up pretty fast. It went from like 0% to 30% quickly. Oh, oh, this is Nora.
Hi, Nora.
She's a noisemaker. So once I finished the Cervidil, I guess that was around like 12 p.m. the next day. I was about 1.5 centimeters dilated. They decided to let me keep dilating without any additional help simply because they just thought, since I had already started, let's see what happens. I think by the time like 7 or 8 p.m. I got to like 4 centimeters pretty quick. And by the time like 7 or 8 p.m. rolled around, I was kind of stalling out. So they're like, okay, let's go ahead. My water hadn't broke. Let's go ahead and put in a Foley balloon. And also because of my anterior placenta, they could not get the fetal heart monitor on. And that was just driving me crazy. So they decided to do the monitoring through the baby's scalp. I will say probably the most painful part of everything was just the Foley balloon. I hated it. Even pushing was exhausting, but it was not as painful as that Foley balloon. I have words for it. So I actually had to do a shot of pain medicine. Because I just couldn't bear it. I could not bear them putting that in. After they put in the Foley balloon, I was starting to dilate more. They got me on Pitocin. They broke my water. I was slowly leaking. Um, that Pitocin hit pretty quickly. I was having a hard time bearing it. I decided, and I guess I should back up. I was undecided whether or not I wanted to get an epidural. I wanted to see if it was possible to do it without by, I don't know, 1, 2 a.m. Thursday night to Friday morning. I just couldn't handle the pain anymore. I was like, I have to get an epidural. I'm dying. I'm dying. And I talked to the nurse who was on staff. I will say the nurses that I had, I could have nominated all of them for Daisy Awards. They were just all so friggin' fantastic. They told me, they said, some people react when it's a very small amount. Some people don't react at all until it's like a huge amount. I'm just a very sensitive person to it, I guess. So I decided to get the epidural around like 1 or 2 a.m. It was put in by 3 or 4. That was the best decision I ever made throughout my induction. If you're, in early labor, like 4 or 5 centimeters, and you're like, I'm thinking about it, I don't think it's a bad choice. Like, that was tough. Yeah. So I had my epidural. I took the most wonderful nap after it, like 3 or 4 hours. It was fantastic. They didn't have to come in and like adjust the fetal heart monitor anymore because she was being monitored vaginally. I was enjoying things about 12 p.m. I woke up from another nap because they were just monitoring me. They didn't check. They don't want to check. If anybody doesn't know, they don't want to check your cervix too much just because when it's open like that, things could easily become infected. So, ladies, if they're constantly wanting to do that and you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can say no.
Yeah, especially after they've broken your waters for sure.
Exactly, exactly. So at that point, whatever you feel comfortable with. If you don't want them poking and prodding, you absolutely do not have to. I was feeling some kind of pressure when I woke up around 12 p.m. This was on the 19th. I went in on the night of the 17th. They had the midwife come in with two nurses. Actually, it was a very fun experience. One of the nurses, because they had two for me, because one was actually training. He was usually in the NICU, but he was training to work in labor and delivery. So they had him and the actual nurse and the midwife come in. They said, Shane, let's go ahead and have you check the cervix. And then, they won't say anything. He can feel it and see what he thinks. So, and he's this very, very nice nurse. He's checking my cervix. They're like, what do you feel? He's like, I feel something. And I don't know what any of it means. And they decide not to say anything after he is done. And I'm like, what's
Okay.
going on? And then the midwife feels and she does it and she goes, it's time to have a baby. And I'm like, so literally I'm sitting there like wondering what they're thinking. They're just super nonchalant about it. They're like, you're ready to go. You're 10 centimeters. So literally in the span of like 14 hours went from 4 centimeters to 10 centimeters. Bam. Epidural. I am convinced that epidural just relaxed me enough to actually let me dilate. Like
Yeah. And being
it
able
was,
to rest for a minute as well with that nap too.
yes, because when I started that Pitocin, I could not sit still. I could not. I had to be on the ball. And luckily, like I could still sit on the peanut ball. I could, move around, things like that. And that's really what I wanted because I knew that that was going to help me get this labor going. I had been really good, especially like second trimester onward, doing ball sits and hip movements, just trying to make sure things stay loose. And also, ladies, it's very important because it will help your baby get to where they need to get. You want to do your spinning babies exercises, you'll find that out. So I started pushing at 12 p.m. I pushed for about an hour. I got exhausted. I had to take like a 10-minute break and I got a second wind and she came out at 2:06. So,
Okay. So
yep.
2 hours-ish of pushing
T-
phase.
About 2 hours of pushing. Funny enough, my guess for her was December 19th at 3 p.m. For our baby shower guessing game. I win the prize.
You're like, I will take
um,
that gift. Thank you.
I will take my own gift. Thank you very much. So funny enough. But no, it feels like when I was in there, it feels like a whirlwind. It feels like it's never going to end. But looking back, I guess this is the sappy mom moment. I would absolutely do it all again. I would do it all again. That's the easy part. The birth is not the bad part. Ladies, I was one of those anxious people who would bombard my husband when he got home because I worked from home. He worked in office. He would come home. I would have used like my time to like just spend scrolling through TikToks, like, did you know that people could die during labor? Like just absolutely a mess. Um, it is okay. You will be okay.
Yep.
You will survive. And look, if things go south, you just advocate for yourself. You say, get me a doctor who will listen to me and you do what you need to do, but you will be okay. And you will love what comes out on the other side, albeit through sleep deprivation. You will love it.
And I know, especially on social media now, there's a lot of really negative stories, and not to discount those experiences because that can happen. But I still feel like it's not usually the majority. And you just don't hear if a birth goes perfectly well. There's not much of a story there.
Exactly, exactly.
Yep.
You always hear about people sharing what went wrong, but
Yep.
there's so much that goes right.
So after you pushed her out, were they able to give her like up on your chest straight away?
Yes, my hospital, and I will say if you are interested, find yourself a hospital that is baby friendly. Everything that people preach to you to do, like skin to skin, delayed cord clamping, things that you hear on TikTok that a lot of hospitals might not observe. My hospital was very good about observing, and that was like the standard care. So we did delayed cord clamping. They took her really quick because she did actually have the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck. They had NICU on standby. So they did have to just check her out for a few minutes, but then she went right on my chest and she was there for 2 hours, while they were doing everything downstairs. So just, yeah, I loved it. That is the moment that I will never forget. Like I can replay that in my head. I have pictures of it from my husband. If that's what you want, like that's what you get. And I know that this is easy to say when you have a vaginal birth. I know with C-section, like because my sister-in-law had a C-section, her baby was breached at 4 centimeters. They had to rush her in. I know it's so hard when you have that, and that just changes things up completely. But if you are able to have a vaginal birth and that's what you want that baby on your chest, get that baby on your chest. That oxytocin is fantastic. It is the high of your life. Like, yes, those little edits that they have on TikTok is like, what is birth giving? Like, what does giving birth feel like? And they have like the flowers blooming and the fireworks going off. That's exactly what it feels like. So it's a very special moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That initial connection for sure. Did
Mhm.
you tear it all delivering vaginally?
I did. Not very much. I only had a second-degree tear and I had a couple of first-degree tears right around my labia. Something that my midwife did and that you can ask your midwife to do is to use mineral oil and just start to stretch around that area while you are in between contractions and pushing. That's what my midwife did. And I'm convinced that that's what helped me not tear as much. Like she was doing everything she could to help this baby get out, minimizing the damage as much as possible.
Did you have to get stitches with that tear?
I did. I was terrified of that. Like literally, it's all the things that you hear about, and you're like, yes, you tear and you get stitches. The stitches are not that bad. They healed up within a few weeks. Yes, it felt funny, and sometimes they did tingle. Like we called it jalapeno peas because it felt a little spicy. Jalapeno peas were rough for the first few days, but that does go away. And honestly, like I'm healed up. I'm fine. Our bodies know what to do. Like they truly do know exactly what to do.
So, with the early days of postpartum, did you have an idea of how you wanted to feed baby with breastfeeding, or how did that go?
I would love to share this story. Oh my gosh. So, in the hospital, of course, they tell you, let's get baby on the breast as fast as possible. She was doing fine. Then she wasn't doing so fine. I wasn't making enough colostrum. I was hand expressing, but I wasn't hand expressing nearly enough. I was pumping in the hospital. They told me go ahead and start pumping right away. And actually, I had started to pump like maybe a week before my induction because it was supposed to possibly help like nipple stimulation, can help like dilate you and whatnot, like soften your cervix, whatnot. So I wasn't able to exclusively breastfeed her at all. Um, I'm getting emotional. Something I want to say about breastfeeding, it is nothing like you think it's going to be. You think you buy all the stuff, you buy the bags because you're like, I want extra milk. And then you start to do it and you're like, this is nothing what I thought it was going to be. Of course, for first time moms, you first produce colostrum, which babies don't need very much of. And then your milk comes in a few days after that, which, then of course, lasts until you're done. My milk was always, I was always an undersupplier. When my milk started coming in, it was only a few milliliters at a time. Baby needs at least an ounce. So I'm always having to supplement with formula. I went to a lactation specialist, a lactation consultant 3 or 4 times, doing everything I could to try to increase my milk supply. She was latching. She was just upset that she wasn't getting enough milk, so she would get very upset. I did triple feeding, which is latching, formula, and then pumping for about 6 weeks. And absolute that was an absolute nightmare. It is exhausting. It feels like, for any new moms out there, baby's eating every 2 to 3 hours. It takes you an hour to feed. It takes you 15, 20 minutes to get baby to sleep. You get about 30 minutes and then you do it all over again. Even with a partner who is there to support you, even with someone who is there to clean your house and cook, it is the hardest thing you will ever do. I only could get to about 25 to 30% of how much formula she actually needed. And about 2 months into breastfeeding, my mental health was suffering so much that I just had to stop. And I went to exclusive formula. And all I have to say is fed is best. For any moms out there, breast milk, of course, has so many good benefits that formula cannot give. And at the same time, fed is best. Your baby will thrive so well and be just fine. Both my pediatricians who worked with me in California before we moved to Minnesota said they were both formula fed. You would never know. No one knows a formula fed baby from a breastfed baby. I will say, if you are an oversupplier, there's also issues with that. I mean, like, it's exhausting having, engorged breasts and having to pump, even though you're already able to feed your baby. You're in pain, you can get mastitis. There's all sorts of things with that. But I think being an undersupplier, for anyone out there who is an undersupplier, you are not alone. It is really difficult and you feel like you're not enough for your baby. But I'm going to say it's just one in a million things of where you feel not enough for your baby. And do not let it define you. As a mother, you are still capable. You are still keeping a child alive with your body. And you birthed that child, C-section, vaginal, whatever it was, that baby is now alive because of you. So it is okay if you are on formula only. It is okay. And this is more for myself than anything. I'm like giving myself a pep talk. Yeah, I even tried to relactate because I was like, maybe I shouldn't have stopped. I can pump a few times a day. At least she'll get like a few ounces. Didn't work either. Like, I completely dried up. So my body said, no, thank you. And yeah. Yeah.
And I think, like you said, when it's at the sake of your own mental health, as long as they're getting the nutrients they need, that is the most important thing. And for you to be whole as a mom, to be able to take care of that baby, the feeding is just such a small portion of time in that baby's life. And like you said, I know there'll be a million other things we'll have mom guilt about, but that baby is going to be just fine.
That baby is going to be just fine. And your mental health needs taking care of. One of the things that I was suffering with for the first few weeks of breastfeeding is that I would see other moms being able to get out and about. I felt like I was always chained to my house, to my pump, and that drove me insane. I literally was thinking about, once your baby, I always say this, but for any new moms out there who want information, once your baby has met their birth weight, sometimes they lose a few ounces after they're born. And then you have to feed them 2 to 3 hours. But once they've reached their birth weight, you're feeding on demand. So sometimes my baby wouldn't be hungry until, 3 or 4 hours later, but I'm having to pump every 2 hours. And then I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to line this up to latching her and then formula feeding her? And then I got to pump again, but I'm not going to get anything out. But then I got to pump 2 hours later to make sure I get everything out. It's exhausting math. And it's like, for me, it wasn't worth it. I gave her what I could. The first 6 weeks are the most vital when it comes to those breast milk nutrients. I did what I could, and then I had to stop. And I will say I felt guilty beyond belief for the first few days. But after that, the free feeling that I got, like I could go places and just take a bottle with me. I didn't have to say, okay, I gotta go home and pump now. I can only be out for 2 hours. Like, we could sit on the beach. I could feed her if she got hungry. I didn't have to plan doctor's appointments around pumping time, or technically plan my pumping time around doctor's appointments. I don't have to wake up in the night anymore, like if she's not hungry. So while I would have, loved to have her on my breast, like that would have been my dream. I just, because I couldn't do that, kudos to all the moms who pump out there. I don't know how they do it. Pumping is hard. And I will say, I don't know if it was just me. I don't know if you thought this. I went in thinking, oh, pumping is a cinch. It's no problem. It is not. I still have my pump. I still stare at it sometimes. I really want to throw it off the deck.
I also had that feeling very early on. I kept mine just in case we have another, but it is
Yes.
hidden back in a closet that I do not have to look at it until that time.
I know. I'm like, man, and you never know. I've heard moms say that you never know what's going to happen with baby number 2. They might be a better latcher. Your body might know what to do now, so it might produce more milk. I am suspected to have insufficient glandular tissue. So I just don't have enough mammary tissue to make enough milk. I never actually had that engorged feeling until I actually stopped pumping. I did like one last pump on a Monday at 5 a.m. I didn't feel like I actually had to pump until 24 hours later. So, and know that for everybody, it's going to be different. Like if you have thyroid problems, it's going to be hard to pump. They actually say that obesity might affect pumping. I don't know how true that is. I don't know the science behind it. They say that if you've had gestational diabetes, that's an issue. And just know, everybody, gestational diabetes is not just from being overweight. It is literally from your placenta. There is nothing that you have done to cause yourself to have gestational diabetes. If you have it, it is because your placenta is attacking your body.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's not a negative around it. It's just something that happens to your body, and it is what it is. There's no shame around that.
There's absolutely no shame around that. So
Yep.
please, do not beat yourself up if you have hypertension or diabetes. You are fine. You will survive. You do what you need to do for your baby. And I promise you, your body goes back to normal after you have your child. My blood pressure literally stabilized within 3 hours of me giving birth.
Wow.
And I had my perfect readings again. I'm convinced they thought that I had hypertension because they would read my number, it'd be like 122/74. And they're like, that's great. I'm like, yeah, that's what it used to be before
Like they were
pregnancy.
surprised, like, wow, that's a normal number.
Exactly. It's always been normal. Thank you very much. I'm very proud of that number. like,
That's funny. Well, that's awesome, Sarah. I think your whole journey being able to have a super successful and relatively, I won't say unscathed, but a relatively positive vaginal birth is just a testament that even if you're plus size, it's absolutely possible. It's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to have a C-section or that birth will come a certain way, that your body is just as capable of doing it no matter what size you are.
absolutely. I mean, look, you can put something in to make a baby, you can get something out to have a baby. It's possible.
Yep.
And my doctors actually said, we want you to have a vaginal birth because it is harder. It is going to be harder when you have an apron belly to take care of your incision. It's not impossible, but it is going to be more difficult for you. So for them, they were saying, we need to do this vaginally as long as we can, as long as there's nothing wrong. So ladies, advocate for yourself. It is going to be a lot easier on you afterwards. The postpartum is already a mess. So if you can do this vaginally, you will feel better. And again, there is no shame in having a C-section. A C-section is still giving birth. But I know, like, in society, the vaginal birth is like the what everybody shoots for, you know? And there are women of all sizes who have C-sections every day. My sister-in-law had to have a C-section, and she, you know, felt the opposite of me, like, when she's an oversupplier when it comes to breastfeeding, but she had to have the C-section. So there was always, like, a trade-off. It was like, you know, one of the things that my postpartum anxiety and depression went to was and I don't know why, but it was like, if I gave birth 200 years ago, my baby would have died from no milk. And I was telling my sister-in-law that in one of our weekly postpartum talks. She goes, "Sarah, I would have been the same way. I would have died because my baby was breached. Like, they would have had to kill me to save the baby." And I thought to myself, yeah, you know, that's right. Like, it's okay if things don't go to plan.
Yep.
It's okay. And if they do, it's great. And if they don't, it's still okay. Like,
Yep. It's all part of your unique story because I know everyone can write out a birth plan, and my doula always told me it's birth preferences because nothing's going to go to plan. She said, if it does, you're a unicorn. And so
truly.
have an idea of what you would like to try for, but also give yourself grace when it doesn't go to that plan.
Yes. The biggest thing I can say is go in with an open mind with everything. Nothing is easy, everything is worth it. Birth, breastfeeding.
And now you have a beautiful little girl on the other end of it. So it makes it all worth it.
Exactly. You will have a beautiful child, and that child will be just fine. So know that things will be okay, and we can do anything that straight size people can do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Before we go, is there anything resource wise or anything that you found particularly helpful through birth and postpartum that you'd like to share?
There is one TikTok account that I love that I cannot recommend enough. She is called the Heavyweight Midwife. She is fantastic. She's kind of a smaller content creator. She doesn't have a huge following, but she was one of the first people that I found on social media that was like, you can do this. She goes so far as to like saying plus size people can give birth, like can give home water births. She is amazing. And so like if that is something that you want to do, you know what? You do it and you do everything you can to get where you want to go. She's fantastic. One thing I will say for especially anxious moms, don't bog yourself down too much with too much research. That can also be a detriment. There were days that I would sit for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours and scroll and see like all the bad things that can happen. Don't pay attention to them. Yes, be wary that they can possibly happen. And, you know, when you get to a comment section of a viral video that said, this happened to me too, this happened to me too, it's like, oh my God, it seems so common. No, it just reached 7, 8 billion people in the world. And, you know, a million of them decided to comment. So it doesn't mean that it's going to happen to you. Rely on the support of your partner if you have one. If you do not, make yourself a village. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you can, go to therapy, talk to someone, because no matter how mentally prepared you are for birth and postpartum, it's a roller coaster ride, and you will always survive to the next day.
Very important. Take care of your mental health no matter how beautiful your birth went or if you had a traumatic birth that you need help mentally, get it.
Final resource, Netflix. Watch something, dissociate, do a podcast, something. When you are feeding that baby every 2 hours, use entertainment. Please do not sit in the silence. Sometimes I found myself doing that. Then I discovered The Pit on HBO, and I literally felt like a new person. I was like, oh my gosh, why am I just not binge watching shows? So find stuff to where like you can get out of your own head.
Yep. You can
That's
have
that's
something fun while you do the daunting tasks.
exactly. And when push comes to shove, like somehow mothers know exactly what to do in the end for their own child. So trust in your gut.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. This has been so great to hear your story, and I know it'll help so many future moms that go through something similar. So I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Victoria.
Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. If you enjoyed this episode and want more stories just like this one, please be sure to like and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, if you have a moment, please consider leaving us a positive review wherever you're listening to this show. These reviews are the best way for the algorithm to push out our show and get us in front of other plus-size moms who may be looking for a community like this one. Your kind words can help make sure that no one has to go through this journey alone. If you are a fellow plus-size mom and would be interested in sharing your story, please reach out to us at biggerthanbirthpodcast@gmail.com. Use the subject line, "Share My Story," and I will be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. Want to put a face to a voice? Head over to any of our social media pages linked in the show notes below to see more photos of today's guest. Any resources or topics discussed in today's episodes will also be linked below. Thanks again for being a part of the Bigger Than Birth community, and we will see you next week. Bye!